Yeah, I think we're live, and it's Thursday the 21st of May, and it's 3:30 in the afternoon in the UK, in London. And Catherine, what time is it where you are now?
It's 9:30 in the morning here, Central Time.
Okay, Central Time. And whereabouts are you in the US?
In Houston, Texas.
Houston, Texas, perfect. So we'd just love to welcome everybody to Leadership Redesigned and the conversation for this afternoon. So just while we're getting going, just while we can see everybody's joining us, that the links are all working, if you can just pop in the chat, just a hello, where you're from, it's great for us. We can all see the chat, so it's great to connect, see if there's anybody in your city who's also on here. So please do post something so we can see who is here, see who's in the house. Okay, so we've got Dr. Susan from Houston. I'm assuming that's someone you know, Catherine.
Hi, Susan. Yeah, absolutely.
Janice from Canada, Melissa from Canada, Jacqueline from Belgium. Great, lovely. Keep it coming. Hi, Caroline. Izette from Johannesburg. Welcome. So we've got lots of people jumping on. Rochelle, hi from Bermuda, and Ella in Poland. Claire, welcome Claire. Tess in Nottingham. So we can see the chat working perfectly, so that's great. I've
got COVID hair, so it's the comment about hair is warming my heart right now.
We'll get very girly and talk about our hair, but we're here actually this afternoon to talk about Leadership Redesigned. And I'm Lisa Barnwell. I'm a transformational coach, thought leader, and I am the Imperfect Leader. And Leadership Redesigned is a series of conversations and panel discussions, and it's with a range of multicultural transformational leaders around the globe. And we're talking about how to innovate, thrive, and rise during global uncertain times. So I think COVID needs no introduction, but what we wanted to do was bring together a group of incredible thought leaders and talk about what we feel is going on in the world of leadership and bring some of our insights and realness to what's coming up for us in our lives, and look at the ways perhaps we can redesign leadership. And we're even open to, do you think leadership needs to be redesigned? So it's a conversation that we want to have you participating in. It's not a, this is what we think and this is the way it must be. It's definitely we're just sharing ideas. But certainly from our perspectives, we feel that there's some room for growth and some room for improvement. So over the last few days, what we've covered since Monday is we've talked about being imperfect and being an imperfect leader. We've talked about building our confidence and sort of working from our core. We've talked about raising our consciousness and being more open to our spirituality. And today we're talking about sort of parenting and juggling all the different balls in the air that many of us juggle. But certainly, you know, if you're a parent and you've got a demanding role, and then you've got a partner who's got a demanding role, and you've got children in the mix who are at home, homeschooling, it's on a whole nother level. So that's what we wanted to kind of presence today and speak to today, is those people who are in that scenario and who are, you know, trying to make it work whatever way they can. And so, Catherine, I'm delighted to introduce you today and invite you into the conversation. And I'll ask you to just share a little bit more about yourself. But what I know about you and what I know about all the women on this conference is that you're incredibly accomplished, and you've got you're a medical doctor, you're a OBGYN, and you've got a master's in public health. So you've got all these incredible accolades. You're married to an astronaut, you know, you're a high-powered couple. But, you know, what I've seen from you in the short time that I've known you is a real warmth and generosity of spirit, and a real kind of connection and an ability to look and see how you can be of service, how you can be of help, and just, you know, on a practical level, reaching out to me and asking, you know, could I help you in certain ways? And I think that generosity of spirit really comes forward. And I know you work with women in a sort of empowerment circle. And I just wanted to kind of presence that today and say that, you know, that's a lovely leadership quality that I see in you. And I'd love you just to share a little bit more. We've heard you're from Houston, or you're in Houston now. So I'd love you to just give us a little bit of a backstory. And then what I'd love to do is just hold a space for us to talk about perhaps some of the struggles and some of the challenges that are coming up excuse me, you know, at the moment, and you talk beautifully to me about some of that. So I think everybody who's on today, that's where we're going with this conversation. So you're in for a treat, and if you have any questions, please do post them in the chat and we'll make sure we cover them. So over to you, Catherine. That's a
Thank you very much. Good morning to everybody here. Good afternoon to everybody around the globe. I just also want to hold space for you and the brilliance of this massive vision of this leadership conference and the way you've brought these conversations together. Just thank you for having me, but especially for all of the diversity of conversations that we're having. So you've shared a few of my credentials, and I think throughout this conversation, people will get to know probably the rest of what they need to know about the formalities. I think I'd like to just dive right into this concept of imperfect leadership, because I think when I talk about my life, kind of looking back on it, I realize we have a surgeon, I'm cutting people open, I'm delivering babies, I'm literally looking after people's lives, married to a fighter pilot who measures everything by what's survivable. And the two of us coming together and really looking at what a marriage is like and trying to hold that level of perfection. And so in sharing who we are, I just wanted to introduce the backstory of what it was like to try to be perfect. And I know that there's so many people out there trying to do that. And truly our firstborn didn't have a chance, because trying to live in that environment, debriefing at dinner with a little infant at the end of the table and this back and forth dialogue about really literally life and death situations, moving from that into, consults I'm doing in the office with my breast pump running in the background and my colleagues saying, what's that noise? This wasn't cell phones or reception. These were landlines. And, well, that's my breast pump, but I have a woman who needs to go to the OR. Can you get it ready? I'll be ready in time. And, holding all those balls. And I know that there's people that we're talking to today who are doing that or have done that, all of those balls juggling in the air. And if they bounce, we pick them up after the first bounce and we just keep on going. And I know there's people going, yep, I did that, or I'm doing that. And I'm not alone in having lived that very, very busy, trying to achieve perfection. And I love that we're opening this conversation and giving ourselves permission to realize that that is just not sustainable.
And I know that from some things that you've shared with me, that's not the life that you're living now, but that's where you were, and you've certainly experienced that. And we are going to talk about burnout a little bit more in a couple more conversations, but that was you went through quite a pivotal change time, and so now you're in a new space. So can you just talk a little bit about where you are now, and perhaps was there a moment where you just thought this is not sustainable, or was it a longer period of time?
Yeah, so I worked the initial part of my career when I married my fighter pilot husband in rural Canada, the only OBGYN around. And I did that practice for a while. My son was 7 on call. And even despite all of the busyness and chaos of it, it was fulfilling work. 2009, 5,300 applicants, and they took 2 Canadian astronauts, and my husband was one of those 2. So we moved from rural Canada down to Houston, Texas, where I dove headfirst into a large academic institution. And so small practice, big practice, did that for a while, left the kids in bed in the morning, came home to do evening routine with them, felt like I barely saw them, restructured some of that, tried private practice here in the US for a little while. And I have to say that transformation for me was not it. There were definitely a few blows to the head, but it was not an aha, here's the moment. And it was really a stepwise progression of, this is not working. I need to shift this, you know, restructure my schedule, which is not hard to do when you're working in a big, you know, hierarchical organization, and then leave that practice and try something different and try to remold and reshape. Ultimately, you know, Lisa, what we've heard in all of these conversations and what it came down to for me was a journey inward, a realizing that if I'm up in my head and trying to, you know, change the external way my practice runs and the timeline of when I see patients and when I go to the operating room and when I take my kids to basketball and when I go to preschool, you know, day trips, field trips, all of that, you can shift it all around and move it all around and restructure it all you want. But it's that journey inward where you realize you've got to go from the head to the heart, and there's no one else that can do it for you. And that's probably the scariest part of it, that there's that fear about, well, what does it look like if I really, really ask myself, what do I want this to look like? What do I desire for my life and for the legacy that I'm leaving for my family? So there was no moment. It was really a step and you know, a retreat and a few really visionary leaders and mentors in my life, and that you know, that courage to step over the fear and say, what does this look like, and how can I do this how can I do this not just different, but in alignment with who I am and what I am at my core, and how I want to show up for those people around me.
And so you'd had that sort of time, you'd had that transition, and you got to a place where, okay, I'm showing up differently, I'm running my life in this way, I've got my marriage working, I've got my children growing up, and then comes COVID-19 and drops a little kind of, you know, let's sort this one out. So I'm curious, you know, what changed for you? What changed for you, rather? Your children are now teenagers, is that right?
Yes.
So, and your husband, does he work away? Does he work at home? What's the realities and the practicalities that are facing you right now?
Right. Well, right. You know, I think what we've learned, I mean, what we've learned during the self-isolation, you know, has up-leveled a lot of the foundational pieces that we had been putting in place for a while. So looking back at that transformation for me, which was really a time frame and you know, a look, feel, listen, be receptive, figure out where to go. And I started stepping into our relationship differently. And I remember a time when he said to me, you know, you're different. And he didn't really recognize what it was. But for me, it was asserting my needs, you know, in a very gentle relationship way. But it was determining that there were things that I needed, there were needs that I needed met, and I could meet most of them on my own. And although I loved him and wanted to be in relationship with him, it was really putting on my big girl pants and saying, it's time to look after what I need. And that was when the kids were a little bit smaller, and that transition where he started to notice that things were different, and I was asking more of myself and standing up for more of what I knew to be true about myself and my relationship with him. And he responded to that. And so I think that that's that beautiful play where he was holding so much with that masculine leadership piece, and I was out in the world being you know, in a masculine world and mindset in medicine. And when I started to tap into that inner knowing and more of those feminine soft skills that really hadn't been nurtured in my life, he responded to that with more of the same. Right. Which I think is remarkable about men, that they really have that capacity and capability to tap into those soft those softer, more relationship skills, and they, what I believe is, really want to be held in a space to be able to do that.
Mm.
So the relationship really became more of a dance where we were, we had grown deep roots on our own. And from that place, the deeper we went with that, the wider and more expansive we could go in our family and also in our respective roles in the world.
Mm.
And COVID has been an extension of that, in that, we're spending a lot more time checking in daily. We're spending a lot more time on our own personal growth, and our personal growth is really kind of parallel play, because we're, constantly nurturing and encouraging each other. And then so much more in our business, because we're literally working face to face on both sides of a desk, where we're touching off each other and asking each other questions. And there's things I do really important for his work, and he's doing very important things with my business. So it's become quite a ballet.
And I want to pick up on the kind of masculine and feminine a little bit, but just, on a practical level, that kind of going from, having work where you were both sort of out and doing things, and now you're together, and there's, we're all together with people sort of in close quarters. How's that working? Is it bringing out different sides of each other that you perhaps didn't know, or is it?
So it's really interesting. I've done a lot of work with couples through the years, and I used to always say, there has to be conflict to be conflict, to be conflict resolution. We have to be able to really challenge and stand up to each other. And yet, the more conscious we've become in our relationship, the more I realize that it's really not about conflict. It's just so much more about being able to communicate openly. And I asked him this question recently, what do you think one of the big things is for couples? And he said mutual empathy. And it really struck me that it's always about assuming that your partner has the best intentions at the forefront of what he is saying or you are saying and doing with each other, and always making that assumption that that's where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And of course, they have to be in self-responsibility over the fact that they are truly bringing their best as well. But once you've negotiated that and you trust that that is where your partner's coming from, then that mutual empathy piece always allows you to reconnect. And so there hasn't been conflict. It's been a true blessing to be in each other's physical space more than we would ever have had an opportunity to do before. And our three children, you mentioned, are teenagers. We've got a 15-year-old boy and 14-year-old twin girls. So very close together. And they're all learning from home, which has created, those are some of the new challenges for us, in that when they come to get help with something, we're all busy doing our respective roles. And the two of us are, who's going to go help with the IT stuff or the tech stuff? Who's going to go help with the math homework? Who's going to take somebody outside to throw a frisbee around because we need a breath of fresh air? And we really play off each other in a way that, another real key point, just have this, what is our shared vision?
So it's having the family sort of vision at its core, but then, you've both got such incredible potential for what you want to do in the world and what you are doing in the world, and I think it's being able to hold that space and play with the different areas, wanting to see and support your children to rise into their potential, but also wanting to fulfill your own. And I know that's where that can be where the rubber hits the road with the clients that I've worked with, is they struggle with actually presencing everybody's needs, and so often their needs will get sort of sidelined, and their partner's career will sort of take a bigger priority, and their children's needs will take a bigger priority. And it's finding that balance, I think, so that everybody has their needs met, because when everybody's feeling more fulfilled and better expressed, then it all comes together. And I, picked up from Judy's conversation this morning, what she was doing is really learning to sort of play and co-create with her family, and making what's happening in COVID as much of an experience. Her children are a little bit younger, but making it more of a playful experience. And I'm really trying to learn from that, because I think there's, your children will be picking up on the dynamics that you're sort of generating. And if they can see this sort of harmonious growth, and they can see this compromise, and they can see this love and this empathy, and all this, it's really powerful, far better than sort of sitting them down and saying, this is what a relationship looks like. I think, when you can model it so beautifully, and sort of be on your growth edge with each other, it's incredible. And I know, as I say, for a lot of women I've been talking to, they've felt really stretched with the relationships they're having. And I think it's because they haven't yet got perhaps the communication and the dialogue going, and there's that, we have to get to that point where we can have those difficult conversations and have the respect and the empathy for each other, and sort of prioritize each other, and with the best, will in the world, sometimes that doesn't always happen in relationships.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think, I can't stress enough what we've heard in multiple of these conversations that you've held, again, brilliantly held for all of us to lean into and learn from, is that checking in with yourself piece. And for every professional woman, the outcome of that relationship with yourself, the way that's expressed is going to look different. But I just want to elaborate, completely going off script here, that when I checked in, I was sensing what you're saying, and I checked in with myself when the kids were kind of, middle school, realizing that this wasn't working for the greater good of the family. I wasn't, able to serve my patients the way I wanted, but I also wasn't able to really be present with my family the way I wanted. And ultimately, for me, that led to a restructuring of the work I did. And it took me a while to realize that those were decisions that I was making as a true leader in my life. It wasn't that I was, and it's always a work in progress. It wasn't that I was giving up or giving in or bowing to his profession. It was really taking that 37,000 foot view of what is it that he and I want to leave as our legacy in the world. We're raising 3 future leaders, and we are really working hard and intentionally. That means that we need to be a team in this. And as an astronaut with hard timelines and places to go and, teams to lead, and myself with some struggles around medicine and maybe some other areas that I could be more flexible in, it became a real ebb and flow. And there were many sacrifices that I made on my side, but all because we were looking at dental visits. He's doing the field trips. He's doing the tutoring, when he needs to. There's many times when he's got work obligations that he changes or cancels or shifts. Now, he's not going to be able to do that from space station, but he, whenever possible, he holds his roles very, very seriously. And it doesn't necessarily mean 50-50. I'm thinking of, people who have younger children. I remember when kids were younger and I had this delusion that it would be 50-50 when we had babies. And he didn't hold that same delusion. So I was doing 80 and he was doing 20. And at one point I just said to him, this is crazy. I'm a full-time physician. And he said, well, you're right. I can't do 50. You probably can't do 50. Let's get some help so that we actually stay fulfilled. Yeah. And how is that going to look for us as a family that's going to serve us? So we're not looking for equity. Every single decision requires that dance to figure out what's best for the shared vision.
Yeah. And I think that's, you know, being able to ask for help, recognize, okay, look, the maths doesn't stack up. If you can't, you know, give 50 and I can't give 50, there's a gap there somewhere. You know, something's got to give, and either we have to let go of some of the commitments we've got, or we've got to find other ways to bring in help. So I think that's an important learning, to recognize, okay, sometimes I think, you know, I see with a lot of women, they just try and hold all the balls themselves, and it's actually saying, okay, something's got to give. And, you know, don't let it always be your career or your needs or whatever, because that's not going to serve everybody in the wider picture. So I'm curious to go back to the masculine and feminine that you sort of touched on, and those different skills, because we want to ensure this conversation around leadership appeals to men as well as women, and what we're really in piece. And so I'm curious about the shifts that have happened actually for your husband in his role, in being in a role that's very, you're saying, very masculine in its sort of, you know, criteria, in the way that it's sort of set up, and how he's developed in, you know, this dance with you, in developing his softer skills, what that's meant in transforming him as a leader. Because I think we, you know, we can talk about the benefits to women, but when I was working with a lot of parents, new parents, I would often have some really interesting conversations with the dads, and talk about how actually, you know, becoming a parent and being a hands-on parent had really shifted how they showed up as leaders. So I'd love if you could just speak to that piece a little bit.
Yeah, so he went out this morning because he had to go fly a jet, which is always really fun. And I said to him, I'm going to be talking about you this morning. And he said, well, have fun with it. So there's always that element of humor. And like I said, as I was going through, you know, greater strengths around leadership and relationship, he was doing the same in his own way. And he's often said to me, you know, one of the most important things that people need to do in relationship is focus on their own personal growth. Because if we're always showing up as our best self, then and we can trust and rely on our partner to always be showing up as their best self, then everything is figure outable at that point. And so for him, some of the beauty in the transition that I've seen is, you know, you can imagine if you're talking about life systems, life sustaining systems on the International Space Station, for example, or flying a fighter jet, you need checklists and blueprints and policies and manuals. And, you know, he's in that all the time. Yes, is this survivable? And when you're talking about other things that he's had to do, especially, you know, as his career advances, he's a colonel in the military. He's been the mentor and guide for the most recent astronaut cohort class. And when he takes them out into the field to do expeditionary training and teaches them what it's going to be like to be in a tin can with their classmates for 6 months on the space station, those skills, you know, as a colonel who's leading troops, as a, you know, a leader in the astronaut corps, those skills require so much more in terms of communication, you know, conflict resolution, connection, relationship building, even love, you know, compassion and resilience, and being able to extend a real care and compassion and empathy for other people, and to teach others to do that, you know, as part of the team, to be able to not just emulate those skills, but actually teach them. And it's just been amazing to watch him stretch into those roles, and the ripple effect of that, to watch how he then teaches that to our son, and how he then, you know, helps our girls understand that they need to have the strength and linear, you know, leadership skills that would be expected of a well-balanced masculine feminine leader in the world. And we use all of those terms all of the time. So that's been a really amazing transition to watch him step into, and I've seen nothing but amazing results coming back from all of his various leadership capacities.
Because I would imagine even just to be able to hold people's fears and people's, that's what we're seeing is a little bit lacking at the moment in some leaders, is they don't have the capacity to be with people's fears, to be with people when they're struggling. And, when there's a sort of need to step up, sometimes that's where I sort of, play with the imperfection. It's not about showing up sloppily, but it's about giving yourself permission to be on a growth journey and to admit that sometimes things feel hard and sometimes feel uncomfortable, and you have fears, and at the moment when we're going into the unknown, and I would imagine for people going into space, however much training you get, it's kind of unknown. It's not many of us have been there. So I would imagine there are fears that he's got to hold as well. And those sort of, when you can have that empathy, when you can play with that, I think that's what, we need for all of our leaders. So, regardless of our gender, I'm just really passionate about all leaders developing both sides, because I've also worked with some, real alpha women who are just so fully in their masculine, and they're absolutely killing it on one level, but their relationships are actually, not in a good place. And I've seen the same with men. They've got these incredible careers, but they're divorced, they're unhappy, and things aren't working for them. So I think we've got to find a way that as human beings we can learn to manage, the strength and the vulnerability, the courage and the compassion, and be able to kind of lean into these different emotions so that we show up as our best selves, and we don't feel that we've just got to be these shiny, perfect, strong, invincible people, because that just isn't realistic.
Right. And when we show up that way, if we really dig it down, it's because we're measuring our success by these external factors of what's expected of us, and we've seen that so vibrantly in our lives with the structures around medicine and the structures around the military and pilots in general, and what and what do others expect of us. And there's where leadership comes from, because we really in working with other powerful people around us always need to be holding that empathy and understanding that they're doing their best, and that really we really haven't cracked this code yet, where we're giving people permission to bring all of themselves into the workplace. And if the workplace is where they can't be that day, they need to be home with a sick child, we need to give them permission to be all of themselves home with that sick child. And whether they're male or female, mom or dad, or mom and mom, or dad and dad, or whatever it happens to be, we as people who are obviously leading and impacting so many people around us, someone has to be first to say, this bar is not attainable, and being able to be happy, and being able to be fulfilled, and being able to really have a quality family life. This bar is not where we want to be hitting. We really want to be measuring our success by the relationships and the love we're showing to the people around us, whether they're work colleagues, family, intimate partners. We can't keep measuring ourselves externally. It's not working for the world as a whole.
And I always recall talking to somebody actually who said when she became a mother, the world just kind of opened up for her, and she just talked about what a better leader she became. And I think it's one of these things, whether it's becoming a parent, whether it's just having a pet, whether it's just being more loving with your family. I think all of us, the more that we can learn to have healthier relationships, and starting with the relationship with ourselves, the better we're going to show up as leaders, and times are gone when it was, you know, the leader just sort of showed up and then everything sort of just personally happened in the background. I think we've got to bring the humanity into it. And one of the things that I think is maybe a good thing coming out of coronavirus is it's bringing the reality, it's bringing the home life, it's bringing, you know, what we've got going on in the background to the fore. And, you know, it's not about just putting on a sort of, I know some of us have got the, you know, the virtual screens so that we kind of present a better image. And I can understand that. And I love it when we, you know, we're all on a nice beach or something. But, you know, we're bringing a lot more reality into things. And I think we're showing up with more honesty now. I know the conversations that I'm having with the leaders I'm talking to, men and women, are just getting more and more honest. And there's just a depth of vulnerability and just, I think, you know, kind of a like, oh my gosh, we have to let go of just keep pretending we can juggle all these balls. You know, we're not octopuses. We don't all have 8 arms, and we can't all, you know, we're not magicians. There's only so many hours in the day, and there's only so much energy we have. And, you know, so I think, you know, I love what you've shared about the journey you've been on. And, you know, it's a navigation. It's not you're not, you know, perfectly there. It's a course correction. And, you know, it's great that you're not having any conflict right now, but I'm sure there will be things that come up that you kind of rub against each other, and, you know, that'll be challenging. But it sounds like you have the connection, and you've done the hard work to build that strong relationship, so that when those challenges come up, you've got the connection and the communication, and the value in the relationship to kind of take you to the next steps.
Mm-hmm. And I totally agree, you know, that we always need to be willing to stand our ground. And so we can call it conflict or challenges, mm-hmm. But you know, I know that as strong, powerful leaders, we're attracted to other strong, powerful leaders. And a really big part of that is being able to bump up against each other, and to do, you know, to be able to do that in a way that ultimately leads to growth and to an up leveling of each other. Because without that, you know, there is no real mental stimulation in the relationship, or there is no real, you know, I don't think you got that right. I think you need to do this. And I can tell you that there isn't a message that my husband, like an email or an important policy document or anything that goes out the door, that he hasn't asked me to review it, you know, and vice versa, because you really need that person to be able to say to you, no, that's not how that goes. And this is not going to land, you know, the way you want it to land. And let's dialogue this a little more. When I was in residency, I had a really close mentor who said to me one time, because I was a little bit later in life meeting my husband, I had expected to have a partner and be all settled by a certain time in my life, external expectations. And this mentor said to me, you know, the right guy has to be willing to bump up against you and challenge you, and you need somebody to bang heads against. And I didn't realize until that was reflected to me that that's a big part of what I needed in a relationship. And I'm so grateful that I'm with such a conscious man, and that we have such deep roots individually and collectively, that we can manage the wind, you know, the wind in the trees when it blows, because it absolutely does blow, and we need to be ready for that. And that's part of the fun.
Yeah, exactly. And I know for me, the best relationships I've been in have been where, you know, we've both got ambitions, we've both got desires, and we're kind of, you know, it's that rising tide lifts all boats. We're you know, we're out for each other, we're supporting each other, we're, you know, each other's biggest cheerleaders, and we're working in ways that we can help each other to kind of rise. And that's not always easy to find. So I think when you find it, you know, definitely you know, appreciate that, which I know that you do. So I'm conscious of the time, and it's just flown kind of you know, having this conversation with you. It's been great.
Yes.
And I'm just seeing some of the shares, which are lovely. I'm just wondering if there's any comments or questions that anybody would like to jump on. I know we've got a few people on the call today. So if anybody would like to ask Catherine any questions, or you just like to put something in the chat, I think we've got loads of, really lovely feedback about how helpful it is to hear other people's journeys and to share. And that's what I was really hoping for this conversation, to share the reality, it's because it's on the outside it can be like, how does she do it all? But I think it's important that we get under, and you talk about, the growth that you had to go through, and the challenges then, and the time. And I think we have to be willing to put the time in, and that can feel really challenging when you just feel like, I have not a minute to myself. There's no space in my life whatsoever. Where am I supposed to do this personal growth work? Where's it supposed to come from? And that's the bit that I think we need to kind of look at how we support people with that, so that there's a mindset shift, so it doesn't feel like, oh my gosh, this is just going to be so much work and I haven't got the space and capacity for it. That actually, once you kind of surrender into this personal growth and stop fighting almost with yourself, that actually, space kind of opens up, and suddenly you get these light bulb moments, and you do get this growth, and you meet these incredible people that you can converse with, and it all starts to become a lot easier. Because I know I bump up against that kind of comment a lot, where's the space, where's the time, to make this growth, but we have to sort of find it somewhere.
Yeah, and in a relationship too, it can really build resentment. I remember when he used to get out for his jogs and I had these 3 little kids at home, there was that sense of, why is he getting that and I'm not? And that's where it comes to, really finding the confidence, the core to be able to extend from and look after our own needs, or request that someone help us. And in a real co-creation, and I'm seeing comments here from, a co-creation, which is that final beautiful phase of a relationship, and you never arrive, but in that co-creation, you're really nurturing each other's personal growth, and you're ensuring that that other person has the time and space and continues. If we fall off, we're edging each other, and if we notice, really great things that the other is doing, we're reflecting and mirroring and naming and amplifying and continuing to lift each other into that personal growth. And we really don't let each other fall off for very long before we're saying, hey, when's the last time you meditated? Or let's go read this devotional together, really working together on that.
Yeah. And I think it's knowing what space you need, whether it's just, whether it's doing something together or doing something apart, just taking those moments. But for me, it starts with that inner conversation with yourself, saying, okay, I need to change something. This way of working isn't working. And then it's about moving forward. And I think as leaders, you have an obligation to kind of lead the way. If you're in any kind of leadership role and you aren't doing some personal growth work, then, this would be really the invitation now, because we all need support holding all the emotions that we're feeling. We're going through a lot of collective change and fear and uncertainty. So I think there needs to be this willingness to step up and grow and open up. And we're going to get to that tomorrow, actually. I'm really looking forward to even though all these conversations have sort of touched on the going within piece, and we're really going to dive deep into it even more tomorrow. So I love the way that the conference has kind of ebbed and flowed, and hopefully everyone listening will see that there was a kind of rationale to the order that we put the speakers in, and the way that it came together. And I love as I say, what we've discussed today and with Judy this morning around the practicalities and the realities and different ways of showing up. That turning lemon into lemonade, and looking at, can sound a bit saccharine sometimes, but I think, looking at, okay, we've got a situation, how do we make it work, and what do we do differently, and taking those steps. So I can't see any more hands up at the moment, but thank you for all the shares, and, please do keep connecting with us. Catherine, is there one thing that you would like to leave us with just before we kind of wrap up, that you would love to just share, that you think is really kind of worth pressing just before we close?
I'm going to comment on one question that I just noticed. How do you create a common goal? The idea of creating a common goal, and how do you start that? And really just dialogue, really going deep with what is it that I see as, for example, our family goal, writing it down, bringing the family together, family meeting, family book club. You know, we've done that where we've all talked about a specific non-fictional personal growth area. So, you know, just bring people together, bring your family together, have conversations. And the one piece that I'll leave you with, and it's, you know, light, and I hope that it helps people understand the levity and playfulness that really needs to be part of this. Not a day goes by that my husband doesn't, you know, joke, even if he's teasing me for my seriousness, or saying to me, oh, could you have overreacted there a little bit? Or he'll go way in one direction with me, you know, making me realize just how crazy I have been about something. But one of his very common humorous themes is, the whole family says, okay, you know, we're not sure what we whiteboard the day, you know, but if we're not really sure what we're doing, we're not really sure where we're going, you know, all of those things, we say we're going to go with the flow. And Daddy says, yep, and I'm the flow. So we go with the flow.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Well, it's been an absolute joy and pleasure to connect with you across the seas, across the pond.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Lisa. It's been an absolute pleasure. Bye-bye.